Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Mindset Monday. My name is Sally Garozzo, and this is the place to be to get inspiration and motivation on how to be happier and more fulfilled in your life. So today's session is called Depression. What is it telling you? Now, of course, this is a big subject. This is a huge subject. And of course, I'm not going to be able to cover everything. I'm not going to be able to cover all the ins and outs in one short video, but I will be covering the most important things that I have learned as somebody who has had a bit of depression and as somebody who helps other people with depression. And it's important to remember that everybody has their own nuances. And so if you are suffering with depression, please do go and get professional help from a professional therapist, because it's not really one size fits all. And what I'm going to be telling you here today are some overarching perspectives. So it's really, really sad that suicide rates these days are continuing to rise at an alarming rate. And so this is no light subject, I'm afraid, but there is hope. However, the trouble with depression is that you feel truly hopeless. You don't feel that there is any hope, and that's why it feels like there's no light at the end of the tunnel. However, part of the problem, I believe, is that I hear people telling me a lot of the time, and you hear it all the time, that they think that depression is a chemical imbalance and that they literally have a broken brain, which is it's very sad, because it's not true, and that they have a broken brain that needs fixing, just like a broken arm. And if they take the required medication, the medication will rebalance the brain chemistry and that they will start to feel better. The trouble is, any respite that you do get from antidepressants, it kind of does wear off, and eventually you need to take higher and higher doses to have any effect. It just becomes ineffective after a while. So what I am not saying is that you should not take antidepressants. You have to make that decision based on your own internal guidance system. I have tried them myself. They didn't work for me because they numbed me out, and I really felt like I needed my feelings. And I needed my feelings in order to understand them and to process them. But I do get it. The pain is real. Sometimes pain is just too much, and we need something to just find the off switch, basically. And that's what antidepressants can do. And so in the short term, they are a solution. The other issue with medication is that it stops people with depression sometimes, not all the time, but it can stop you from taking full responsibility for your own health. And it can stop people really getting to and understanding that there is a root cause of this. And if you don't know that depression has a root cause, then you are really only getting half of the story. I would say that depression is a form of chemical imbalance, but it's not random. That chemical imbalance is caused by something. And I would urge you to really check the research on this, because there's a lot of research out there. And one of the best books I've found on the subject is Lost Connections by Johann Hari. So it's all back to front here, but it's absolutely brilliant for anybody interested in the subject, any therapists, or anybody suffering with depression. So if you have depression, it might be that your depression is trying to tell you something, and I believe that it is. So what is your depression trying to tell you? Well, I've got my three things here, and the first point that I'd like to make is that depression is telling you that you need to find your real human family, not necessarily your blood relatives. Now, a lot of people with depression have had less than perfect upbringings, for sure. And maybe a parent was depressed or addicted to something, maybe an alcoholic. Maybe your parents or parent rejected you for just being you. Maybe you learned as a child that you were no good the way that you are. Maybe you felt guilty for being privileged. And most of us don't have perfect childhoods, that is for sure. But I have this belief now that that is actually a good thing, because through our dysfunction, we can grow into our own people. We can become better versions of ourselves, and we can become better versions of ourselves for our children and our children's children, okay? So one expression that I absolutely love, and this is from my teacher, Marissa Peer, is that it's never too late to have a happy childhood. And one of the ways that we can do this is to find real human connection with others who are not necessarily our blood family, especially if we've got real troubles with our blood family. So human beings are hardwired to belong. We need to feel connected to others, and in the absence of connection to others, there will always be hardship, there will always be suffering, there will always be struggles. Hi Martine, good to see you. Hi everyone that's watching. The thing is, our brains are hardwired for connection, and our brains are constantly searching and looking and filtering for ways to connect to others. And so finding your human family is an absolute must for anybody who is depressed. And Johann Hari, in his book, talks about a doctor's surgery who's actually started prescribing group gardening instead of antidepressants. So this helps people to get outside in nature, work together. They are bonding for a common purpose. They're working towards a common goal. He also talks about this idea that depression is actually a grief, and it's a grief that we have been torn away from each other, and this grief that we're not connected. And you know, it's a result of modern day living, actually, that we're all so separate, living in our separate flats. And it's no coincidence that depression is so much higher in cities where we're all living separately. If you go to third world countries, for example, yes, their hardships are very different to ours, but they don't have as much depression because they rely on each other for support and for feeling safer. So I just want to tell you something about myself, just to illustrate this point that isolation is not a good thing, but what you can do about it. So sometimes if I'm working all day at home, and I'm alone, I will end up feeling a bit boxed in, a bit isolated. Maybe I haven't really spoken to anybody. Maybe I've been communicating via the screen all day. But there's this part of my brain that eventually feels kind of shut down from my throat and my heart center. So often when this happens, the last thing I feel like doing is going out. I mean, everything is delivered these days. You know, you get your Amazon delivery, you can get all your meals delivered, your shopping delivered, anything comes to your flat or your house, right? So there's no need to go out. But it's so important to make that effort, to force yourself to go out and to connect with other people, even if it's to the shop, to the supermarket, because when you do, you get this burst of good feeling hormones, these good feeling chemicals, which are used in programming to help us kind of keep going back. We're programmed to keep going back to find this connection with others, because it actually ensures our survival. You know, in tribal times, we would not have survived if we lived outside the city wall, if we were out. You know, the worst punishment you can ever give anybody is to banish them. You know, in prisons, you go into isolation, or it's just awful. It's horrible. That would have been the worst punishment. You know, it's certain death, actually, if you can't be with others. So the trouble is, when we are depressed, we get very, very resistant to the idea of connecting with others, especially if being alone or being on our own has become our kind of regular modus operandi. Maybe it's become so familiar to us, and the brain is so wired to keep going back to what is familiar over and over again. And then, of course, we tell a story around that. We invent this story around these untruths, these things like we've got nothing to say to someone. What have we got to give? We've got nothing to give. We've got no skills. We've got no talents. We've got no value. And we just feel utter crap about ourselves because we believe this story. So I'm going to tell you that that's utter crap. It's utter bullshit. And I don't care who you are, what you've achieved in this life. I believe that you do have something very, very powerful to give other people, even if you don't say a word, even if it's just your presence. Which brings me to my next point, actually. But before I go on to my next point, I want you to know this. I want you to know that no matter what you are feeling, do not underestimate the power of human connection. Nothing is beneath you when it comes to your mental health. And what I mean by that is you have options. You can volunteer at a charity shop. You can volunteer in a hospital. You could lay your hands on a sick person or a dying person to make them feel better. You don't need any particular skills or talents to do that. You could join a choir. You could do some community gardening. You could help a neighbour. You could... there's all sorts of things you can do. My partner does metal detecting. It's a good way. It's his man hobby. You can make stuff out of waste or plastic or whatever. So there are always things that you can do no matter what you believe in, no matter what you believe about yourself, you do have something to offer. And I just want to go back because Gary has said something. Oh yes, I always say to my singers that their greatest fear is to be outcast by the audience, banished. So true. Yes, being a fellow singing teacher as well. That's exactly what I tell my students. So my second point then, depression is telling you that you are believing a lie about yourself. Depression is telling you that your thinking is wrong. Your thinking is harsh, hurtful, critical, and it's aimed at you, okay? And if you were to speak out loud or write down those thoughts that you are having towards yourself, you might be shocked. And if you spoke to a friend that way, let me tell you, your friend would run a mile. They would be long gone because they wouldn't put up with it. And it's ironic that we don't talk to other people the way we talk to ourselves. So some of the things a depressed person might say to themselves could be, you are useless, you are nothing, nobody is going to buy into what you've got to say or what your creations. You might as well stay at home all day, you're a waste of space, your life is of no value to anybody, and it might be better if you were dead. And this is a sad fact, and I've been there, and I know a lot of people have been there, and it's very, very sad. But the trouble with that thinking is that what is expected tends to be realized. And so if you are saying all of those things about yourself, they will become a reality for you, which will then in turn give you more evidence and more proof that what you are believing is true. So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy in a negative way. But I'm going to tell you something. It's not true. It's a big fat lie, and it's based on flawed programming from your parents or your teachers or people who brought you up in a less than perfect fashion. Now, I am not saying that we need to go and blame those people, because our parents are victims of victims of victims. There's a whole ancestral lineage around this, and we don't blame, we seek to understand. And the reason this thinking feels so bad is because you are telling yourself stuff that is not true. So there's a disconnect between you and you. So your inner being, the part of you that is eternal, if you like, or the part of you that is part of nature, is absolutely perfect. There is nothing missing from that. Nature is perfect. Nature doesn't make mistakes. You don't need to be more interesting. You don't need to be more beautiful. You don't need to be more articulate, more clever, more this, more that. Yes, you can learn stuff through life and improve yourself, but the essence of who you are doesn't need changing, basically. So when you start to change the language in your mind, the language and the pictures, the way that you see yourself, your feelings will change. And so will what shows up for you. So all feelings are chemicals in the body. And feelings are chemicals in the body that are released when you think certain thoughts or imagine certain things. And you can very, very quickly create an environment in the body that is based on something that you are imagining. So you can imagine a hot couple having sex and you will get turned on. You can imagine somebody crying. You can imagine the most harrowing thing and you will start crying yourself or feel anxious yourself. But simple things as well. Imagine eating a lemon. If you imagine eating a lemon, it's happening. You will start to salivate. Try it. Close your eyes. Imagine sucking the juice out of a lemon. Imagine what it might feel like if you start to eat a lemon. You have a physical response to something imagined. So if you're imagining yourself as horrible, as horrific, as evil, as nasty, as hopeless, as pathetic, what kind of chemicals are you releasing into your own body? The power lies within you. And if you have depression, it might just be that you've become a little bit lazy or sloppy, as Abraham Hicks says, in your thinking and the way that you perceive yourself. So that is where the work lies. The work is internal. The work is mental, then emotional. Okay, point number 3. What is depression really telling you? Sorry, no, I'm not quite finished point 2 yet, sorry. What I did want to say was that it might be that your self-love muscle is a bit weak, right? Like any muscle that's not used over time, it gets weaker and weaker. And depressed people are very well practiced at depression, right? Their whole identity might be interwoven in the idea that depression belongs to them. People with depression and anxiety say a lot, my depression, my anxiety. Get rid of the word my. It's not yours. Well, it is yours if you choose to own it, if you choose to put the prefix my before anything. You know, my book. I want to own this book. It's my book. I want to own my phone. I want to own my house. I'm going to put the prefix my before it. But I don't want to own my stress or my anxiety or my depression. So loosen up that terminology. Use different terminology around it so that you loosen the grip on it. And unfortunately, people with these mental illnesses really tend to identify with them. And then it becomes really difficult to let go of, especially if you are getting something from it. So in the therapy that I do, which is RTT, not only do we look at where you first picked up the idea that you might be useless or not important or whatever from your parenting or your upbringing, but we also look at what you are getting from this depression. Because even though you don't want depression, your mind thinks you need it. It's this irony. So once we've shined a light on this, we can then start to understand why it's in your life, why it's in our lives, and then we can start to loosen the grip of it. It becomes much easier to sort of unpick. You know, when you've got a knot, it's all tightly knotted up, you really need to unpick it so that you can unravel it. Okay, The third thing that I think depression is telling you is that you are not following your heart's desire, and you are not believing that what you want is available to you. So there's a wonderful quote by Brené Brown: the only way to stop the calling of your heart is to answer the call. Now, it may be that you don't know what your calling is or what your heart's desire is, but then I would ask you, what did you like to do as a child? How did you like to play as a child? Did you like to make things? Did you like to make up stories? Did you like to sing? Did you like to perform? Did you like to take photographs? Did you like to read? Did you like to write? What did you like to do as a child? And that will give you an indication of your heart's desire. Or maybe you do know what your calling was, but you're playing it safe, or worse still, you are looking at it through these really longing eyes and believing that what you want is totally unavailable to you because you're not that kind of person, or you don't believe that you have those skills or talents, or maybe you're afraid of failure, or you're frightened of rejection. And fear of rejection is such a big one, and I do have another video all about rejection, so go and find that one if that's a big one for you. But in essence, you know, nobody wants to be criticized, especially when we're putting our work out there, our creations out there. It makes us feel very, very vulnerable, and it's true, but we have to get over that. We have to understand that, and I got this from my friend Kirsty Kianifard, who's an amazing coach for wellpreneurs, so do go and check her out. Kirsty says it's much easier to be a critic than it is to be a creator. So you do have to dig deep within you. If there's a calling that you are longing to heed, it's not easy, but nothing worthwhile ever is, to be honest. But being a creator, I think, is curing. And it cures a lot of those mental ills that we find ourselves with. And if you're suffering from depression, you have to answer the call, the calling of your heart. I like to think of it like this: what if you are sitting on a great idea that could save somebody's life? So following your heart's desire does take a shift in perspective. Okay, it takes bravery, it takes courage, but here's the thing: I believe in you. I just want you to believe in you too. I know you can do it. Look, if I can do it, you can do it. I'm telling you. So no matter what your situation or circumstance, even if you're working at a job that you don't like, there are always ways to shift your perspective, to get more meaning and purpose into what you do. It might require a difficult conversation, but that confidence that you need to have that difficult conversation is totally available to you. You can learn anything online. Just punch it into YouTube: how to have a difficult conversation, how to ask for a pay rise, how to ask my boss to give me more responsibility or less responsibility, or how to shift my perspective in a job that I don't like. Anything is figure-outable these days. What else? Well, I've gone, that's it. It all comes back to acceptance of yourself, exactly the way that you are, knowing that you are not fundamentally flawed. That flawed feeling has come from your programming, from your upbringing, from society, from culture. And it's up to you to change the meaning of anything to suit you. Your mind literally is a meaning-making machine. So knowing that we are all the same, we all have the same struggles, we all have the same pains, do what you can to see your own inner light. Do what you can to see the inner light of those people around you. Stay inspired, listen to podcasts, learn, develop yourself, love yourself, make stuff, try new hobbies, get more meaning in your work. But most important of all is you need to shift this internal language. You need to change it to something more positive. And it's a daily practice like working any muscle. You have to wake up and you have to intend every single morning, today my intention is to treat myself kindly, to praise myself. So if you're depressed, that depression is trying to tell you 3 fundamental things. It's trying to tell you that you're disconnected from your human family, that you have critical thoughts aimed at yourself, and that you're not following your heart's desire. Like I said before, each individual person does have nuances, and you should definitely seek out a therapist to help you unravel what your particular nuances are. So finally, my final thought around this is that we can blame society all we want for our depressions. And it is true, depression is a societal problem. I get that, I am not denying that. But there are things that we can do to start taking our own personal power back, to start re-empowering ourselves. And that's what doctors and the medical profession want us to do. They don't want us to take antidepressants. They want us to take our power back. So rest in this. The solution is being worked on because problems create solutions. Depression is creating a solution. Solutions are being worked on, but they're going to take years before we see a utopian society, right? Decades, millennia, who knows? But if we continue to look outside of ourselves for the solution, we are going to be waiting a very long time. So heed this calling, take your power back. I believe in you. You can totally do this. So that's all from me today. I would love to hear from you. If any of these things have worked for you or didn't work, that's okay. Let me know. But if you're still struggling with depression and need help really unpacking it, I will be able to help you in an RTT session, which can be done brilliantly online via Zoom or in person with me in Brighton. So what RTT does, it works by clearing all of that negative programming through the use of the subconscious mind. It's done under hypnosis, and it gives the most important operating system of all, your mind, not your phone, your mind, a massive upgrade. And for those of you that don't know anything about RTT, it was designed and developed by the amazing Marissa Peer. And it really is taking over conventional therapy because it's rapid and it's rooted in the science of neuroplasticity. And if you haven't heard of it yet, you soon will, because it is becoming a household name. So as always, if you want to know more, just send me a direct message on Facebook or Instagram, or email me info@sallygarozzo.com, or check out my website, sallygarozzo.com. That's all for now, and I want you to remember and know how loved you are, how brilliant you are, how amazing you are, but more than that, you don't need to be anything other than who you are. Lots of love. Have a great day. See you next week. Bye.